This is the Harmonic Motion podcast, a place where you, dear listener, can join with automotive aftermarket professionals as they delve into and discuss the matters which matter.
Welcome to this episode of the Harmonic Motion podcast, and I'm delighted to welcome Jim Lang from Garage Services Online to the episode to talk all things garage services online. I've had several conversations and known Jim for a year or two now, and he's a really interesting character, great business, and customers I know that we have in common rave about the services that they are supplied with and supported by Jim and his business. So Jim, welcome onto this podcast.
Thanks so much. Thank you for inviting me.
You're more than welcome. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation, however it unfolds and whatever we cover. But I was really interested, and thanks for agreeing to appear on the show. And I'm really interested. I know the conversations we've had, and I'm hoping we can share some of that with our dear listener. So, Jim, for our listener that wouldn't know you, what is your sort of background story, or the origin of you? And you've ended up running this great business that are offering these services to garages and helping them drive their business on.
I got into the web in 2000, having been a teacher for 5 years. And before that, I was doing a variety of different jobs in my 20s, pretty directionless, you could argue in some ways. And I was asked initially to write a newsletter for a web team for a company called Telelogic, which subsequently got bought out by IBM. And then after a few months, I subsequently got appointed kind of head of that team, and desperately trying to catch up with the workings of it and trying to understand how all that goes, and very young family at that point as well. But what was interesting about that company was the fact that they specialize in requirements management. And that's something that I've taken with me in terms of building the products and services that we do now. And it's very much, our website service has been very much driven by kind of customer requirements. It's pretty much completely driven by that. And then obviously myself and the team will be looking further ahead as to what Google is demanding, and the other search engines for that matter, in terms of, keeping our customers' websites relevant and at the top of their game. But then from there, so that was working for that company, and then I left that company and worked for an off-plan property developer in Cape Verde. That lasted just over a year. I mean, surprise, surprise. And then I was asked to join company called Quantic Designs Limited. And then there was a client split literally within a year of that. And being pragmatic to the resources that we had within the company, because some of the resources in the team went with the original CEO of that company, we had this account with Unipart, and we were based in Oxford at that time. So this is around 2008. And then I just thought, well, because we've been doing generic websites up to that point, and because we've been working in software, when we were looking around at that sector, it was evident to me that there were so many techniques and a different way of thinking that we could bring to this sector and just basically specialize in independent garages. So we were approached by Unipart. We became their favored website provider for a Unipart car care scheme, as it was then. But it became quite evident to me after a few years, and we had, I don't know, around 200 odd customers at that point, 250. But it became quite evident that after doing that for 5 or 6 years, that I didn't have the business acumen myself, even though we were doing a great service for our customers, and we have so many of customers that have been with us for 14 years, which is, a huge compliment to us. But I realized, a bit like the Donald Rumsfeld thing he said in the first Gulf War, there are known unknowns, and then there are lots of unknown unknowns. And I certainly knew that I had limitations in how to grow the business the way that I wanted to do it. So we ended up, I don't know why, but we ended up living in Italy for a year. We took the kids out of their schools, in Yorkshire. We were living up in North Yorkshire at this point. And we put them into the local schools in the walled city just near to Pisa called Lucca. And I consciously went there wanting to just reflect on the business, almost kind of do an informal ISO 9000 of it, clear up the processes, document everything in the hope that I could find someone to help push the business forward and educate me further and so on. And that makes me really empathetic to so many garages, actually, because if you don't know how to run a business, you could be brilliant operationally. But if you don't know how to grow a business, well, you just don't know. So anyway, as fortune had it, I was having a coffee with my wife, Shona, and I met this guy, Eddie Thomas, who introduced himself whilst we were having a coffee. And what was wonderful about that was that, I was in my late 40s at that point. And Eddie, in a very quick time, not only became my best friend over the years, which is quite unusual, at that stage of your life. But his background was as an acquisitions director with large media companies within the UK, Australia, everywhere else. And he was at a part of his life where he was kind of floating around Europe, and he and Karen had decided to stay in Lucca. And anyway, as our friendship developed, he became curious about the business, and I kind of told him about it. And he very kindly one day said, "Oh, would you like me to have a look at your financials?" And I said, "Okay." Didn't see that. And and as he said, the financial reporting was so minimal. It probably took him 10 seconds to just kind of raise his eyebrows in despair. So over the course of that year in Italy, he took more and more interest, and he kind of started advising me about this, that, and the other. When we then came back to England, he then suggested taking a formal interest in the business, and that was kind of transformational for the business there. And it was utterly transformational for me because I had no idea about what financial KPIs you should be looking at. To think that the fact I was running this business for 6 years and knowing not much, it's quite frightening to think back on it now. And but anyway, he put proper reporting in place, and all of a sudden that kind of gave me a level of solidity, so that I could actually, instead of dealing with things operationally day by day, I was then able to understand what was the cash flow like, how much money did we have, how could we invest in this, that, and the other. And that was really transformational. So we then started building a slightly different team to the team that I had. And then as we were building this team and selling more websites at prices that made sense, because before there were, again, because I didn't know the KPIs, it was all a bit kind of, wet your finger and stick it in the wind kind of thing. We then realized that in order for us to really attack the market, we needed someone else, a really bright person to help us with our production. And this is where serendipity came in again. I was in Harrogate, and I popped into a local hardware store. I had to get some matte black spray paint from my son's school projects. And that's where I met George. And the fact that George was working in his parents-in-law's shop, compared to the history he had before working for HMRC and briefing people, and quite, really stellar. We got chatting, and I suppose there was that commonality that we were both Southerners who'd moved up to Yorkshire and all that kind of stuff. And and then he came on board, and he then took on the role of director of production. And so with Eddie, with his kind of financial acumen, and with George being able to create the process is again very much led by requirements, as opposed to coming up with a preconceived solution. We've been able to grow the business and recruit more and more into the business as a result of that. But one of the key things I think that Eddie brought to the business with this sound kind of financials was the fact that he told me the importance of, it's one thing to have your accounts, but all this is history. But what he was able to do was an expression that he uses is called prescriptive accounting. So that's almost to the point where you can forecast what's going to happen in 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. And we've got a really excellent guy in Daniel who creates these amazing spreadsheets. So now in the last 3-4 years, we've been within 5% of where we are. So if we were to stop trading now, I would know within 5% what money would be coming in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years. And you know, it was transformational in that. But again, you know, pragmatism created the business. If it hadn't been a Unipart account, it could have been another account that we specialized in. But when I started interfacing and talking to all these different garage owners, you know, I was full of admiration for them because, again, like me, they were entrepreneurs of small or larger businesses than my own. But, you know, I always kind of doffed my cap to them. I just thought they were very impressive. And you know, and when you think about the environment that they're having to work in, I just had full respect for them. And I felt very at home within the sector almost immediately.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, so that entrepreneurial growth supported by sort of mentorship has got you into the position, you know, with the business as you are today, and that's pretty impressive, I think. But you weren't necessarily seeking mentorship at that stage. You'd done that. You were essentially sort of reviewing where you'd got to and thinking about it from it's slicking up, enhancing the business machine, maybe with process reviews and thinking, could you do it better? Yeah, I think that yeah. And then very interesting. I have a mentor in my own life who has a very similar background, mergers and acquisitions for a big bank, and very similar in terms of forecasting, you know, sales and thinking about that as a direction and giving the business some level of guidance. Where I often think in very simple metaphors, you know, like driving in the dark with no headlights on. That was the business really before we were thinking about that prescriptive.
Yes. Yeah. But also, I think what was really what was a huge thing was that Eddie, you know, we were growing the team, and we probably had 4.5, 5 people in the team at that point. We're now 9 or 11, depending on the size of the projects that we're working on. But what was a huge thing for us, and this is again being quite sensitive to the market and looking around, we were probably like most web agencies where we would have a principal sum paid up front, or that's what we'd ask a customer for, and then you'd have a monthly license fee after that. But then with Eddie doing the financials, you know, at the helm of that, we then moved to a subscription-only service, and that was absolutely transformational because we effectively had taken the risk for garages to get a top-level website from us, but it's paid for just by a monthly subscription. There's no upfront fees, no matter what web package they would want. And it meant that we were able to lower the barriers of entry. And also it means that, and it keeps us on our toes, you know, it means that we're a monthly fee that we have to justify to our customers. And sometimes, but it's within the first year, we're never going to make any profit because of, you know, the acquisition of that customer, the build of the website. We do all the population of the website. We do ongoing account management, you know, check-ins with our customers and all of this. And also we have to keep a very wary eye on Google because we principally target organic traffic for a number of different reasons, which we might get into later. But going to subscription only, all of a sudden that just rocketed company, and that was very much down to kind of Eddie's thought process and his clever management, and we're growing organically, so we had to be very careful with that. But that was transformational, and I love the fact that we've been able to democratize our service to garages, so that they only have to contend with a monthly fee, and after 12 months, if they so wish, typically they can go. There's no penalties or anything else like that. But thankfully, with our retention rates and with our growth, it's very pleasing, and we certainly don't take it for granted. We work pretty hard here.
I think that's a really interesting point there, that you are under constant review with that. And I love that model. With you're not, the investment is spread over that period of time, and the garage is going to have a laser sharp focus when they're looking at their own costs about the benefit that the website is bringing them in terms of the cost, and looking at that as an investment. What leverage are they getting for the investment in the services that you provide? And we'll dig into a bit about website, because I think in the market, let's say websites are a band. It's almost as bad as the word diagnostic. What does that mean? And where does website fit into business? Where does it fit into marketing? Where does it fit into their own customer acquisition and growth? And I think there's some really good things that we can talk there. But I love that model as well, with that monthly, the monthly contribution. And we had a very similar conversation. We went from a standalone training center here, Jim. We went for accreditation, so we can deliver nationally regulated qualifications, and it was quite an onerous process. I'm a big picture guy. If you talk to me about detail, I'm likely to drift off somewhere. But this was the detail of all details. So I saw that project through and got it over the line. And during the discussion, it came about a very similar thing, but in a different perspective. And the guy said, we need to have this process of quality, and we assess all of your paperwork, and you do that internally here, then you submit it and we assess it. And I said, well, what's the purpose of that? He said, this is how we maintain quality. And I said, what do you mean quality? He said, that you're actually delivering the training to the right standard, because these guys are mostly dealing with colleges and huge corporate institutions. Oh, I said, quality, right? Yeah, no, we do that slightly differently. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, if I deliver a rubbish training course, they will never come back. We don't get funding from anywhere else. They pay as you go. I said, quality is endemic in the product. So I couldn't quite get it. It got me to that point. Oh, quality. Of course, they're dealing with a lot of people that take big chunks of funding that they draw down on over a period of time, and quality is on a different measure. So I've got a direct parallel into that. You having to justify on an almost, transactional basis that we're still doing a good job for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. It's really pleasing that when, so for our website, it normally takes 4 to 5 weeks for us to turn around the website once they've approved the final design. But as I said, it keeps us on our toes. It makes us very committed to our customers. And I think the other thing is that I never think about people having jobs. I always think about them having livelihoods. And I know you hardly ever hear the word livelihood now. But it was a word that my dad always said to me, and I'm very conscious of the fact that if you're providing a service into a business, which is normally a collection of livelihoods, you shouldn't be punching the air cynically because you've got a sale. You want to ensure that there's a huge positive impact for that business, or certainly a net gain. You would hope for a huge positive impact, but certainly a net gain. And that's very much kind of the principles by which we run the business, and that ethos runs through the business as well.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear, that element of, I think when you're providing services, and I would class what we do here is very similar in terms of we provide a service, and actually beyond the level of the thing that we deliver, our own aim with our garage clients is to ensure that their business is successful, because our business depends on their business, or our livelihood depends on their livelihoods. And I think that very neat, it's almost we're so far integrated into a mutual win that we need to succeed together. So I get that. I think that is, and sometimes it's not seen by people that are looking at your business from the outside. You are a provider of ... as a service provider, but and I don't think it's common. I think you've got a very interesting perspective on that. You are locked into that battle to succeed or battle to fail, that's mutual support to engender prosperity, because you're intrinsically linked. Your success depends on their success.
Completely.
It's amazing.
Educating them that we may be the source of their improved success can be something else, but we got plans afoot for explaining that better as well.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes quite difficult, isn't it? When your service or your offer can be pigeonholed and the word is very non-descriptive and has some huge assumptions in it. It's sometimes getting across to the value proposition. So how this isn't just a ... in your case, provider of web services. You have to look. It's almost at the elevator pitch. I think I did latterly, probably in the last year, I did a business accelerator program for one of my little businesses, the software business. And I had a real problem coming up with the description. I didn't have an elevator pitch. What is this thing you've got? Well, it's just this. It's just, I don't know. It's this thing. And, sometimes people bandy descriptors around a thing when it's actually much, much bigger. And I found that pretty cathartic process to go through. And actually, it's really helped me decide and drive on that particular business to know what it means, almost for me, but from the end user perspective, from the client's perspective, and having that chance then to be able to explain that. And I think, with garage services online and the things you do is so much bigger than a website. I know we chew the cud about this in principle of, business generation and marketing and, how that's driving the garage's business on. It is not a website. You cannot describe it as such, although it is, but it's much, much more than that. And I think sometimes that's the challenge that you must face in terms of, your proposition to your potential customer. I can picture somebody swaggering up to you going, okay, so tell me about your websites, and how that conversation must unfold. So what sort of discussion points would that sort of conversation lead to, Jim? How would you describe what you do to?
Well, I'll go over the process briefly first about how we put a website online, and then I'll talk about the pointers that actually make us create the website that we do. So because we've been doing this for kind of 14 years and we've been nothing other than this, we've been collating a huge amount of data, and by collating that data, if you imagine 14 years of doing nothing other than independent garages, we pretty much know what's happening in terms of how people are plugging different search terms or different words into Google and the other search engines. But ultimately, it all comes down to, if someone asks us about websites, the first thing that's the mechanics of getting whatever sets of eyes you want onto the business. But ultimately, if someone asks about our website, we talk about their business. And I'm very conscious of the fact that within the sector, and you can look at different resources there, that most garages make a return of 5 to 7%, and that's pre-corporation tax. A lot of garages are only billing 45 to the mid 50s in terms of their hours. So they're it's hard. It's hard for a garage owner. So what I try and find out is that if a garage could have an ideal week in terms of the most profitable work, and some garages have their finger on the pulse for this, and they get it straight away. Other garages may not. They just may not know. They've got no idea of the different profit levels that individual repairs and servicing brings in and so on. But I want to find out what their ideal week is. And then I encourage them that for the website, that we just put on the most profitable work on that website, because every garage is busy. Most garages are stacked out, got cars on the forecourts, everyone's busy, they're working really long hours. But then if you think about that, if that's typical of pretty much most garages, and you're still only making 5 to 7% return, well, that's something that we need to address and remedy for them. And the way of doing that is, I would suggest that if you have an effective website and you have a website that is basically marrying someone who has self-qualified themselves, normally at the point of when they're wanting to purchase or book a service or book a repair, and they connect via the website with all the different repairs and services that the garage has pre-qualified to us that they know to be profitable or they just want to have coming in. Well, then you've got this very elegant, efficient meeting of minds in the middle. But the problem is that a website really comes into its own, I would argue, that if you make that website a platform of profitability as opposed to capability. Because if you basically just talk about every single thing that you can do under your roof, then it's the same problem again. If with one of our websites, you just get more calls, more inquiries, more volume of throughput from your audience, but you're still in the same position as before, where you're saying yes to the next job and yes to the next job. So the way that I like to set it out for our customers is that if they can identify what is profitable within the business, we only put that on the website. And sometimes there has to be a period of belief in the website, but more than most, they'll come back to us through our quarterly check-ins and so on, and they'll ask us to whittle down the repairs and services that they have. They may even ask us to whittle down the manufacturer's cars that they want to have coming in. And by doing that, they can start relying on the website, if correctly strategized and correctly set up, so it is effective. But that website in itself becomes an alternate channel of inquiries. And then the hope is that gives the garage the confidence to say no to those repairs and jobs that they know will hardly wash its face. And they've got the website just bringing in the profitable work for them. So that's a very long answer to a short question. But effectively, if someone asks me about websites, I just talk to them about their business. And then obviously I then map their requirements, because I always go back to their requirements. So I've identified their requirements from a 10-minute briefing chat. And then I would show them how we're doing this for other garages that would have the same portfolio of things that they would want to have done. And then from there, if they go ahead with the proposal, it's a 1-hour call where we cover the look and feel, all the content. We want to capture that garage's individual voice. So if they're using certain terminology within the garage, so that the website in itself, there's no step change from what the customer would hear if they were to walk into the reception or call them up. But we would then obviously, when we're doing all the content, we would obviously then supplement that with our own language from our research so that it matches how people are searching for things within their areas. And that's how we get that very efficient meeting of minds in the middle.
Yes, and so you raised some really interesting points there, Jim. I think I love the fact that you're channeling in the work that is going to be profitable. So I think some garages view, we talk about social media and their general marketing efforts, which might include a website. It's about getting the phone to ring. And you've highlighted that subtlety. It's about getting the phone to ring with the right sort of work. I heard a thing the other day. I can't attribute the author or the person that said it because I can't remember. I'm getting old and grey. But they said
you're grey.
They said the inbound phone calls to a garage should be for one of two reasons. Reason number one, it is somebody that's responding to your outbound marketing. So somebody's seen a message and they're responding because it's hit a chord with a service or something that they desire. And that should be channeled, as you said, into the direct work. The second reason the phone should ring is for one of your loyal customers that has an emergency and they need some help. And when I talk about this, we were at a trade show recently and I floated that as a concept to the group of assembled. The looks around the room going, and I said, I can bet 95% of you here will have your phone ringing for people looking for a price. Yeah, it takes a lot of time. Okay, so how have they managed to communicate with you on that level? Were they looking for something specific? No, it's generally how much time do you spend generally pricing work that you're not going to get? And it goes, are they looking up into the sky? Yeah, that takes quite a long time. And so what you've said there resonates really soundly with actually channeling the right customer, with the right repair opportunity to your car, and connecting that with the garage that can deliver that excellence in service and make a profit whilst delivering brilliance and securing that customer, as on an ongoing basis. And I think that narrowing or funneling, as you've described it there, of the profitable inquiry to the capability, I think garage ears ought to be pricking up, and that is, for me, 100% the objective of driving inquiries into it's not about the number of, it's about the quality of, and it's about that directing it. So that's really interesting to hear you say that.
And I think also, again, it's kind of breaking down the perceptions as to what a website can do, or the assumed limitations of a website. I mean, if you were to give a website any other name, what it effectively is doing, it's a business's way of connecting with their chosen audience. But if you don't have a plan, you may not have a chosen audience. So that goes into a whole other thing. But it's a way of connecting with the audience at the first point of contact. Over the 14 years, I mean, it's extraordinary what we've witnessed. Before we were doing desktop websites, websites that you'd access via your laptop or your desktop computer. And then all of a sudden, mobile websites became a thing, but then a lot of businesses thought, I don't need the mobile. And then Google then caught up with that. And then they basically said, I don't know how many years ago now, that because Google's always, this is the big argument about Google. Are they fashioning behaviors, or are they reacting to behaviors? Probably a bit of both, I should imagine. But then Google said, content was always king. And then all of a sudden, user experience then started sharing its throne with content. And then from that point onward, they then announced that if your website, however well regarded it is, and you would know it's well regarded because it's at the top of Google or the other search engines, if that user experience isn't reflected by someone using a mobile device, first of all, there were two different types of search engine results, and then it became one, and then however good it was on the desktop experience, you were then downgraded. So the thing about Google's moving all the time, but the other thing is that when it comes to websites, I think there's a lot of, people. We're trying to educate garages, and being on something like this is great. It's great for us, and I hope it's great for the trade as well, because they can go. Well, they can certainly come to us. I'll be delighted, but they can go to their own web agencies as well, and they should realize that if the website is set up in a certain way, they can change the profile of customer, the profile of work that's coming in. And the other thing I would say is that if you've got a website, and hopefully at that point of launch, everybody is happy about the website, but that website should not remain a snapshot of the business as it was then. With our kind of quarterly check-ins and so on, we're wanting our customers to tell us that something's changed. So if they've identified by using so many of these kind of great garage management software systems that can identify efficiencies, inefficiencies, profit, not profit, if they're getting that mother load of information there, we want them to evolve their website. We want them to reprioritize their services. We want them to put a promotion on. And when I say a promotion, I don't mean a discount. I mean just extra eyes onto it. And I think, if we can educate the trade so that they understand that the website is meant to evolve, and it's meant to evolve as their garage evolves, and with the pricing crisis or the cost of living crisis at the moment, it may well be that certain jobs aren't as profitable anymore. Well, let's make other jobs more prominent. Let's downplay the other ones. I mean, they'll all be found, well, certainly with our websites, but you can create additional prominence by employing different techniques as well. And so it's that idea that the website is meant to be reflective as to what's going on within the business, and it's just not a static in a tick box exercise that pretty much could be found, may not be found. Are you getting reports? Have you any sense of ROI? That's not what we want it to be. We want it to be almost like connective tissue to the decisions that are being made in where the owners realize, we should be going in a different direction here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the things that sprung to mind, a descriptive word there, was organic, and I'm going to use organic, and it leads us into the other version of organic. But organic, as in terms of, it's a living, breathing thing, and the website. If I think about my own business, the website here, we have 100% of transactions for our business is web based. We have no telephone call. We've moved all of the incoming inquiries into a ticketing system where we can offer a better service to our clients. And we took a decision to shift that business to that wave so we can be more reactive and more responsive. And the business website has to be reactive of the changes that we've got in our product offer and our services. Whereas you've hit a really good point there, that some websites you look at for garages and other service providers, the photographs almost appear to have classic cars on them. They're very old, and the website's static, and it's been done 1,000 years ago, and it is just really a shopping list of services, a tick box, diagnostic tires, Campbell servicing with a phone number. It's a shopping list and a phone number. And of course, garages can have that view that we're so busy, we don't need to do anything. One of my favorite discussions when we do analytics with our more senior groups is that what's your marketing strategy? And we'll use marketing and strategy as two words the garage may not have great familiarity with, but we're saying, how are you engaging with your customers, and what is your mission? Word of mouth. Oh, word of mouth, right? Okay, we don't need to advertise are the two key phrases, and you may find the same thing. So and we're so busy, we're booking 3 months, 4 months, 2 weeks, whatever that number is out. So we don't actually need any more work. And I think the subtlety that you've hit on there is, number one, the website has to be organic to reflect current business trends. And we're seeing a move towards single or reduced makes, as you've said. Second one is about the services that you're offering. Do you really want to be fighting with Quick Fit for cam belt jobs, or do you want your phone ringing for people looking for prices? The offer perspective of an offer, again, when we think about marketing and garages perspective of offers, means discount, because they're being pummeled with their parts providers of the offer is how cheap we can get it, or the Snap-on Toolman is coming with an offer which is 2 for 1. And so the offer actually has to be about the service quality. So my offer to you, Mr. Customer, is great service, reliability, and your car's not going to let you down. That's an offer. It isn't about pounds, shillings and pence. It's about service quality. But organic growth, so the website is organic, as you say, that biological, it's moving with the business. And I think that's a service that you provide to your garage clients, which is missing, I would say, from what I've seen from other garages. We do one of the modules here is marketing, and we do a loose health check on people's websites that are coming to the business. And we're offering them loose ideas of things that they might look at. And one of those is about that organic and growth nature of their business. I'll give you another quick example. So organic and people's familiarity, and really, I think where garages may not see the value in having that review service. I'll give you a little anecdote. I went on SEO training with Olivia, who was here doing the digital marketing when she was employed. We were on an SEO optimization training course to get some of the buzzwords and think about that. And we're thinking a lot of digital marketing agencies will get you on the first page of Google, and their proposition is based, we'll get you up the search rankings, we'll get you to number one position, we'll spend, and we hear about AdWords and first page of Google, when in fact 90% of the people that were on that training course, other businesses across small and medium enterprises. We did a round robin, what's your objective for being here? And so it came around to, we were looking more about some of how the mechanics of SEO worked from a perspective of the content in the web. It was a bit more technical, and all the other business owners were there with the sole reason of working out what they were spending money with their marketing agency for. There were some big numbers being spent with Google AdWords. And the businesses there said, we don't even know what this is. And the lady doing the course, she was a marketing expert in this area, and she did a health check of garage businesses. The businesses that were there from a website perspective. And then she said, okay, you've got Google accounts. Open up your Google account. Oh, I haven't got the login. That belongs. The marketing agency has actually set up their Google account. They now own the profile, and they were holding these companies almost to ransom in a way about this Google ad work. The concept of organic also comes in, Jim, and I'll open that up to you to let you share with the listener what that means. But what we found were the businesses that we were in that review session for were sucked into a very different way of thinking about their web presence. It had to be about spend, and it had to be about AdWords, and it had to be about being number one in Google. And what transpired as the course went on was more about how you're going to actually win with the different organic element of a website. So would you be able to share, because you'll be much more eloquent than I will, about what that means, the organic nature of growth or presence or visibility within Google? Because I think it's absolutely critical if somebody was selecting a provider of web services to be responsible for the digital marketing, in inverted commas, of the business. Why is organic really the thing to go for? Why does that win?
So we've always gone for organic, and as with any industry, there are well-established analysts, and you probably want to dip into all of them, but you always imagine there's some kind of agenda behind it. Whether it's overt or kind of discreet. One of the ratios that I came across way back, and it hasn't changed, is that in the same space of time that one person clicks on a pay-per-click ad or a Google ad, 12 people have clicked on organic links. Now, that doesn't mean to say they're all clicking on your business if it's on the same page. But the reason why we go for organic, first of all, is that if there's 12 conversations in the space of time where there'd be one other conversation, I'd rather go where the conversation's happening. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing is that, you have to think about, why is there that ratio? And I've been involved in the web since 2000. But 2-3 years ago, our chimney sweep retired, and I have no idea. So I looked up a new chimney sweep in Google, and I have no idea why I went past the pay-per-click ads. Why should a chimney sweep? Why should a garage? Why should anyone? Why should any business be good at SEO? But even with my kind of formal understanding about how search engines work, I think I pretty much mirror most people. Most people will just bypass the PPC ads, and they'll select one of the organic ones, because even if people don't intimately understand how Google and the other search engines work, there is this idea that there's some kind of meritocracy, that those individual pages are being listed on that Google search results page deserve to be there, because either it's the best answer in the area, or it's the best answer pertaining to what your inquiry that you've had, and it's got authority from a whole range of different things that lots of people clicked on there before. Google itself thinks it's the best answer around, and whatever else. So that's why we focus on organic. And if, for example, it were to change, then obviously we would change with that. But that ratio to me is, why would you not want to go after organic? It also helps our customers as well. So if you have a website, and unfortunately, a lot of web agencies will produce something nice and shiny and glossy and whatever else. They give them the website. 6 months down the line, they get a call from the customer. We're not getting much from this. Oh, we'll do some search engine optimization for you. So they've produced content. They've populated the website. Now they're only going to make it so that it could potentially be found by the search engines. Well, I would say that's quite cynical. And then if that's not quite working, then they'll suggest pay-per-click ads. And they say, well, you should do PPC ads. Now, don't get me wrong. Pay-per-click ads can work incredibly well. But if anyone's online presence is predicated or dependent on pay-per-click ads, you want to make certain that if they click on that ad, it goes to something on your website that closes the loop. Otherwise, what you're doing, you're literally throwing money into a well and you're never hearing the splash. So and the other thing with pay-per-click ads, they are there's an administrative cost to those. So you'll never ever get the budget of display of the ads. There's always somebody having to, quite understandably, having to administer those ads. But the other thing, it's also a marketplace. So what could be 80 pence one day might be £1.12 the next day. So by us focusing on organic traffic, and we do some PPC as well, but by us focusing on organic traffic, it means that with our subscription model, the garages know that they've got a predictable level of spend. And in fact, if, for example, they wanted to really get into something else that they wanted to do, we had a garage recently in Wyndham in Norfolk, CSN Autos, and Chris asked us if we could create some additional content for a specific set of marks of cars, but he wanted to feature both the EV hybrid offering for those and also for the ICE. And so we did those for him so that we can get greater attention for those specific marks. But yeah, I mean, I'd say organic traffic, because it seems to be that we're all still rather suspicious of PPC. The conversation's in organic, and it makes it easier for our customers because they know that's what they're spending. And it's for those reasons. However, the only problem is if you go for organic, which we contend with every day, you have to make changes to the infrastructure of how those websites are built. So 2 years ago, I know you're into your sport and I'm into my sport. And so if I go onto the newspapers where there's sport, sometimes you just wanted to click a link and all these background ads were loading and the page was juddering and the link disappeared and all that kind of stuff. So Google 2 years ago created an update and informed everybody, if you don't sort out your background ads and you don't improve your download speeds, we're going to downmark you. So we did a whole array of testing for our website, and we were able to put that in place not only on all the websites that we'd already built, but obviously it's then accounted for all the websites going forward. Google did another update in September. Usability and content, I think we're at parity. Now it's gone back to content being prominent. And then they did another update in March, and they've kind of added this way of evaluating websites called EEAT, which is, so the new element is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And so this again means that you have to look at your content. You've got to make it, there has to be a net difference between your website's content to your neighbor's website. If you're using anything that's templated, from this latest update, I mean, we're now exploring with API, so that we create different content for our websites, but now we're looking at AI so that in fact we can take on to see how that's going to work, because if anyone's watched Spinal Tap, the requirements for individuality have now gone up to 11. But this is something that we always do, and for us, we never pass on our innovations or our reaction to what Google requires to our customers. We take that on the chin, and in fact, these Google updates are basically they're there to kind of counter AI, this kind of made up text, but equally as with most things, we can actually help address the AI issue by using AI ourselves. So that's something that we're working on at the moment, which is interesting.
Yeah,
for us.
Yeah, no, it is very exciting. Yeah, I think it's an important, again, to think about those two distinct elements where pay-per-click can work for short-term gains. I think when I poll people and think about asking them about the way that they search, I know there's been great transitions in search, and as the garage thinking about their presence on the web, it's probably the thing. Maybe they don't think about the customer journey into the phone ringing for them, and where visibility or otherwise of their garage is coming from. Mobile search where people are driving by going garage near me, or they're looking at Google search, which may come up with a ranking or feedback element. So I think garages often see their website as that static, this is our presentation to the world, and they're not really looking slightly the other side of it and going, well, how are your customers ever coming across your website? And I think there's a lack of understanding about the customer journey to even get the opportunity to answer the inquiry. And pay-per-click, organic growth are interesting. The pay-per-click people in my business case of my SEO course had no real concept of, they were asked to set keywords. So the people were going, well, so what's your business? And they were choosing a word to describe the business, and the agencies, and there were multiple agencies because there were multiple businesses, but the theme seemed to be then they were pitching in this marketplace as you've described it. So if you could garage service near me, because that's what I think, I'm a garage and I want people to search for garage services near me, you go into a pond or a pool that you're bidding for where you appear in that first set of the web page. So if you're spending your 10 quid per click on garage services near me in your area, your 10 quid is spent with a click, and there's no way of closing the loop. And a lot of these garages found, the lady did some analysis about traffic in that, so what are you getting from your pay-per-click? You're getting inquiries sometimes that lands in a page that has no relevance to the keyword they're paying to click for. So it lands up and they hit this page and that has no bearing on the search term the person was using. So the 10 quid has guided a user into the website, got them to a point where there's no relevance, and they back straight out again. And the business had no idea that that's how the pay-per-click done badly was that what actually was happening. They thought that they were landing in the website and were dealt with the inquiry process of that business. But they didn't realize there was a lot of subtlety. The organic element of that had to be that you're offering back to that, it's a living, breathing thing that reflects your garage. It has to have the same language that you would use in your garage. It has to portray the services you want to portray. So pay-per-click can be a way of channeling, but done badly, it's the biggest, that old saying of marketing, 50% of money that you spend on marketing is wasted. The problem is you never know which 50%. And I would venture to say pay-per-click, it's probably 95%. Done badly, most of the money that those guys were spending was wasted. And these guys are spending thousands of pounds a month on pay-per-click.
But also, this again is where the meritocracy of Google comes in. So if you are going to go down the PPC route, and again, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you can close the loop,
yes,
and you understand what return you're getting, and then that leads to a whole conversation about setting aside a budget for customer acquisition, so getting more customers in, and also customer retention. But what's interesting with Google is that if the PPC ad is written well, and just as you said, James, it's connected very well to the destination or the landing page, whatever you want to call it, then in fact, you can take more and more prominent positions on the page, even if you're not paying the top price for that particular search term. Yeah. But the key thing is that make certain that whatever page that they're landing on, they've got to interact with that page. Because if they don't click on something, there is no way on God's earth you're ever going to find out what's happened to that £10. Yeah. You have to find it out. So, but again, if you're viewing it as a return of investment, and everything is based on a return of investment, if it costs you whatever you might set up your acquisition budget for a new customer, say it's 10% or something, well, if it works out around 10%, carry on with the PPC thing. But again, remember, it's a bidding market. There is always a silent I would argue, management fee. So you're not always paying for everything that you think you may be paying for. But it can be a very good supplementary thing. And if you have the budget, it might be the only way you want to go for it. But the question is, if you can nail the organic traffic, you can push all that aside and make it a lot easier for someone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that you've summed up really nicely there, Jim. I think that's why I was getting at with the garages strategy. They're often drawn into pay-per-click as the primary method of promotion, when in fact, what we're sort of saying is you have to have a really good live organic website first, and you can use that as a supplement. But I often get the feeling, and hopefully we're going to touch on it in a second, about the mechanisms for that digital footprint, if you like, about social media as well as as well as websites, and then as well as the Google element of that pay-per-click. It's about, and I think sometimes if you look at that, we've had the conversation there, which has gone a little bit strategic and a little bit detailed. I get the feeling sometimes garage owners are so busy making the business work that those subtleties, it must be quite difficult to grasp that if you've been sold as pay-per-click as a way to drive, what do they say, driving or funneling customers towards your website, not really realizing that the organic landing zone has to match and you have to engage with that. It's you've got a disconnect. So I think that's a really valuable introduction. Description of how they have to be mated. Yeah. Jim, what's your perspective then about the social media aspect, as we see lots of garages who are thinking about their digital footprint and the way that they're funneling customers towards their business have maybe multiple aspects of that. Some would be website, and some would be social media. How do these things sort of overlap, or how could a garage think about that as a sort of a knitted solution?
So when it comes to social media, I don't think should ever be viewed as there being any partition between social media and your website. A lot of people would regard social media as kind of preaching to the converted because they're following you for some reason. But again, it's a very democratic way of actually putting your message out there, because everyone's got a phone, everyone's got Facebook, some people have Instagram. There are lots of other new agencies on the block. But I think, again, it's got to be relevant. And I think the other thing is that it depends on how the garage views themselves. So a lot of garages will view themselves very much as the hub of their community. And if that's the case, then there's only so much you can really bang on about your own business. And but so for those ones, I would suggest that you could really make it very community-led. And so you've got this expression called sticky content, which means that people come back to it again and again and again. So you can have it that way. And the other way, of course, is that you're just educating your customers as to what it is that you can do. But I speak to many, many garages, and I think they kind of mix up who their audiences are. Their audiences are me. I'm delighted if I remember whether it's the footwell of the passenger seat or the driver's seat to pop the bonnet. That's I'm a screen wash, dipstick kind of person, and unfortunately I don't have any more kind of mechanical skills than that. But I think a lot of garages, they only want to feature those jobs that will impress their peers, but their peers aren't going to put money in their pocket. No. So one of the things that I always suggest is that if a garage gets some personalized number plates, maybe a couple of them, they can stick them on their car, on their customer's car. That then becomes their intellectual property if they take a photo. Have your phone about you, take it landscape for social media, portrait for social media, landscape for the website. That's invariably how it works. And I would kind of talk about jobs that are coming. I would talk about things that they do. And I know that a lot of garages are able to kind of really grow their business very well, again, with word of mouth, because there was a survey a couple of years ago, and they were saying that word of mouth obviously still exists. We're humans, we chat all the time. But in fact, word of mouth has left the analog world in terms of its preferred channel. And now it's things like WhatsApp and instant messenger and Telegram for the younger ones. And so social media really does work, I think. However, what you can also do, and what we do, is that if our customers have a Facebook or an Instagram feed, we would embed that on our websites. We then add some additional bit of coding. I won't say what it is. But what that effectively means is that people can see these feeds on websites, but this additional bit of coding, that means that enables the search engines to see it as well. So ordinarily, if you've got something being piped through to your website through something known as an iframe, the search engines can't see it because it's not your content. It's a third party. It's another source of content. But what we do is that by adding this bit of coding around it, the garages can just carry on with that culture of social media, Facebook updates, Instagram updates. But it then is directly updating the website. So then when it comes to our quarterly things, we can then do the heavy lifting as and when they ask us to do that. But I think social media is only going to grow. I think there's going to be an evolution towards apps within 5, 6, 7 years. And I think there's going to be a real blurring of social media apps and websites pretty soon. Which again makes it quite exciting.
Taking that sort of onto a different level where your brand is now maybe your app. We're finding a lot of things that we use here as, I would say, tools or services are going that way, appifying, what was a web service into a more sort of dedicated fit for platform. Yeah, so that is really interesting. Yeah, so social media is, again, we probably have that in common where I look at some social media posts and we do a small review with some of the more senior guys here that come on courses, and we have a horror show, a hit list of disastrous posts on social media to try and give them a little bit of coaching into some of the things that might look. And we've heard that parallel that you don't see Gordon Ramsay showing you a picture of the inside of his cooker. And we see garages showing the latest and greatest technological scan tool. This is the season for air conditioning, so I'm seeing lots of air conditioning machines and pictures of this thing and one of the sense checks is, does that resonate with an 8-year-old? So is your message coming across to somebody that is at that level? And a picture of 2 different coloured 4-wheeled trolleys with cables coming out of them and the number or name of a gas. And aren't we good because we've now spent this money? Essentially the message is we can make the thing that doesn't blow cold now blow cold. And how you get that from a picture of what looks like a Dalek with cables coming out of it, there's often just something really simple in terms of garages can do from a customer perspective. What is the message that you're sending out? And that resonates. So does it make sense to an 8-year-old is one of those really key phrases about taking snaps and pictures. Make sure it's relevant and the message is seen. Otherwise, people do just sort of switch off. I was interested. I was at a podcast show a while ago, and one of the guys on there, a big influencer. My kids were made up that I was sat next to this guy, and I had no idea. He looked like a scruffy urchin in a t-shirt, but he's apparently the biggest thing in social media. And it's very interesting about that audience attraction. He was ruining the fact that it almost goes towards a little bit of clickbait and non-organic, where your pay-per-click has landed you somewhere that you didn't want to be. But from a social media perspective, where they were finding negativity in the fact that they'd got people in under false pretenses, and then the people weren't engaging. And so the audience engagement dropped because the thing that they got the like, share and subscribe from now isn't reflected in the daily activity. And there's an element of really just being honest, and that back to that organic. It is what's inside the garage, and you should be sharing that with your community, if you like, of people that follow you on social media, but making it relevant in a context level. That how does your shiny aircon machine turn into cold air coming out of my dashboard? There's that sort of resonance of, it's really simple to do if you think about it in that way.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, are they thinking about their peers in other garages showing off their new machine? Because to be perfectly frank, that is absolutely utterly irrelevant to the mechanics and the deployment. But the end result is somebody wants cold air blasting in their face.
Yes, but very,
Yeah.
but how true, and it sort of takes me back to the principle of a concept shift of when you're thinking about social media things, and we try and do it here, but sometimes it's difficult because you're caught up in the heat of the moment. But it takes me back to the conversation about the man, selling drills, and you look at mechanically a drill bit in a catalogue, and the guy had a concept that actually he was a provider of holes. He wasn't selling drill bits, no, he was selling the ability to make a hole in all sorts of things. So the drill bit was the mechanism to achieve the hole in the desired zone. And I think that when you're creating social media posts, you have to go, I'm not showing a drill bit here. I am the cold air is the hole. I am a provider of, not showing the mechanism. And that for me, I try and get that ringing around my head when I'm doing snaps of what's going on here, and trying to make that level of relevance. Yeah. Jim, sort of going sideways a bit from digital, and really your opinion then of the other mechanisms of communicating with customers. So if we sort of talk about, how you communicate your proposition to an end user, your thing for the customer, where does sort of the old style of direct mailing? I notice my own household, if I look at the volume of things that are now dropping through the letterbox, there seems to be a sort of, not a shift, but definitely an uptick in the amount of sort of direct mail that are coming, and that might be postcards or it might be formal letters. Do you have an opinion on that in the garage's marketing mix? Is that relevant, or are we largely?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm a great authority on that in one way or the other. I mean, anecdotally, from my own experience, there is less mail coming through the letterbox, obviously, but I have seen that there's less detritus going through it, and it's a bit more pointed communications. And I quite like the novelty of actually opening up a letter. I must say that I do. And in terms of communications, and obviously you have to think about GDPR, and that's a completely, that's a thing in itself, really. With all this double opt-in to make it safe and so on. But I think most transactions for a garage or not transactions, that'd be the wrong word, notifications to their customers, I think the main focus should be things like WhatsApp. And I mean, it's so strange. WhatsApp to texting is what email was to texting before. And I this is a terrible thing to say, but I can go a day and I never look at my text messages because I don't, and then I go, oh, there's one from my mum. That might be why waiting for a day. But I hardly look at my text messages, but I'm constantly on with WhatsApp, and there's some really great business WhatsApp platforms that you can use. We recently invested in one. It's so clever. It's not expensive. It's got so much that you can do with it. But I would say, I mean, in some ways, I think print may have had its day. But again, that's interrogating your database, thinking about the age of the clients that you have, I still think, there is still potency in print for sure. But in terms of cost and the value of that, I would imagine it's electronic, really.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to measuring the effectiveness. So even if you were thinking about trying alternatives, so if you weren't really into WhatsApp or you were doing a lot of texting, I guess the message has to be, to measure the effectiveness of whatever you're doing today to see if that's right for today and maybe right for going into tomorrow. So closing the loop on, did that message work? What was the response rate to it? Did it get, I think a lot of the metrics you see with the electronic mechanism, yes, it landed in, yes, they opened it, yes, they responded to it. You can almost track the journey or the responses to some of that, which makes it much easier to work out if that's working. And it's a bit like some of the detail, I suppose, behind the metrics of the social media aspect. Did somebody engage? What was their read time? How long did they, look at that? What was the engagement level like? How many searches did it appear in? There's a mechanism, I suppose, then of evaluating the utilization. I know you're doing that with your reviews with the customers that are using your website, but it has to be probably the number one thing if you're going to embark as a garage upon a method of communicating is checking to see if it works. It's closing the loop, isn't it? The reporting back to go, is that effective?
Yeah, no, it is. And again, that's why online is so elegant. It's so efficient. I mean, to go back to what I said at the beginning, if the garage business pre-qualifies what they want to be found for, the only way that they can be found online, obviously not existing customers or word of mouth customers, but online customers, where the majority are congregating, the only way that they can find you is because you've written about it. Now, if they find you at all, you have to write about it effectively, and there's a whole array of other factors to make yourself top of the listings. But that's why it's so elegant, because you pre-qualified what you want. The person has self-qualified the exact same thing. That's why there's that lovely sweet spot, that meeting in the middle. And that's where the conversation and the inquiries happen. You don't get that with drops. But at the same time, I still think there's a whole new concept of marketing called the messy hexagon. And what it effectively is saying is that because we're being absolutely kind of blasted from every single direction through everything, just so bizarre if you think about it. In fact, there's nothing wrong doing a follow-up with print. There's nothing wrong using an email, even though email, you could imagine, email is getting an engaged audience in email is, you have to be attritional, and you've got to be consistent, and you've got to test, and you can't expect that much. But I think it is an assembly of these different things, to make a business effective. And again, looking at what's around you. People in Torbay, I don't know whether, maybe the silver-haired people of Torbay, you'd change the marketing mix for them than if you were in a university town.
Yes.
To make it relevant.
Yeah. And there's probably a bit of age profiling, isn't it, of the type of customer that you're looking for and the way that they prefer to communicate with. And, if you're looking to drive your profile into a set segment of maybe age, that those can be classifiable by the way that they prefer. So, as you said there, older people may prefer text, and the younger people may prefer Telegram. And it's finding the just channel as well as the message that works. It's the channel to deliver that, isn't it? To get that access to that customer or their preferred communication style. And you could be having the best possible message. Look at Facebook in terms of the age profile of users. If you're looking to get into the lower age brackets, the people that are on Facebook that are under 25 are doing it to keep in touch with what their parents are doing. It's not for them. That mechanism isn't really. So I guess there's an audience for a channel as much as there are all audiences on all channels, and it gets into the sort of more subtlety, the subtle element of that. But that's again, I think going back to what you said in the early doors, they're making sure that the website is mobile friendly and presents well, and you've got all the functionality in there, because every man and his dog has got that mechanism of going on to their favorite search engine on their telephone and searching for whichever search term that they're using. I was going to ask you, Jim, about voice search. So what we're seeing then with the advent of Alexa and other mechanisms, where it's even we're so now busy we can't even use our fingers to input things. Voice search has become Alexa, tell me all about where I can get my car service. Is that changing the landscape or the visibility or really the up-to-dateness that the garage website has to take that into account of the search method? Voice search?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So what enables a website to be picked up by voice-activated searches? So as you say, whether it's through Google Assist, Siri, Alexa, whatever it might be, is a language called schema markup language. And schema markup language does a number of different things. It creates the paragraphs that you'll find under certain listings within Google. You can even create the FAQs that you sometimes see on the search results. But as part of our service, and before it was like an add-on, it was something that we used to charge those clients who wanted it additionally. But now we've foregone the charging of that, and it's just part of it. So what we realized, in fact, that with your website or with a website, what we do is that we reflect all the individual repairs and services that are displayed on that website within a company's Google business profile. Now, the thing about the Google business profile, and I do bang on about Google because Google is the predominant search engine, and depending on who you read, it's anything from 87 up to 98% of all UK online searches.
Yeah.
But Google, when Google is assessing the best answer to a question, which is what we're all trying to achieve with an online presence, they will concurrently look at the Google business profile and they'll look at the website. And so the tighter they're meshed together, the better. But what also happens is if one fully populates a Google business profile, and in fact, it's not technical, it's pretty time absorbing. And you can put promotions onto a Google business profile. What happens if you fully populate it? All of a sudden you become compliant with voice activated searches. And just to move away from that for a second, also by fully populating your Google business profile. So this is something that all garage businesses could do now. It means that you become more relevant in the search results. You become more relevant for people who are using mobile devices outside of a Wi-Fi connection. So if you're working off 4 or 5G, and it makes you, going back to it, voice activated compliant. So we do that with Google. We also have that schema markup language within the websites anyway. And then you can also then replicate the same thing by using Apple Maps. So then you're hitting both sides of it, the Android
and the
crowd and the Apple crowd.
Yeah.
But there are some crazy statistics, and again, this is where you have to kind of question these industry analysts. 2 years ago, they're saying something like up to 21% of all accessing the internet was done by voice activated searches. But I do know, look at my own 3 children and others, that generation, and actually the older generation as well, they are talking more into their devices to go onto the internet than anything else. And obviously it suits itself if someone's in the car, with all the telemetry and everything there.
Yeah. That's it. I think the technology has leveraged the technology in a way with your voice activated, your Android or Apple CarPlay. You can now do those things. It's reading you messages that you're receiving, and you can use that to communicate outwards. And I think that's probably, for people that are spending time in the car, your voice activated searches becomes then a habit, doesn't it? So you can use that at home with your connected device. I always have this.
But sorry, I was just going to say, but also it raises questions for us and anyone else who's going for that organic traffic, because no one, if you and I are chatting away or you're chatting to your device, you're not going to say, I don't know, VW Golf Service Huddersfield.
No,
are you?
No.
So that has implications as to the type of content that you've got to put within the websites. Gone are the days are all the method where everyone looks at the stuff behind the page. It's all on the visible page now. So again, you've got that, you've got AI, you've got all this other stuff that, you have to continue to be reinvesting into the system, asking questions, staying ahead. But it does have implications for web providers like ourselves.
Staying relevant. Yeah, I always get a picture of Father Jack using Alexa to ask for whiskey delivery, and how that would go down, or the very famous Ozzy Osbourne trying to use the voice activated navigation in one of his cars. I think I love that. 15 minutes later, and Alexa's ears are bleeding where it's been. Hasn't quite worked. Yeah, no, that's been awesome. Jim, that's a really awesome discussion that we've had on on your services, and also on the wider technology for garages and how they can leverage I don't even know what we would call it. It's not even digital. I know digital marketing is a buzzword, but it's probably marketing, how they're getting their voice out to their customers and connecting. And you made some really, really valid points, and I think there's some really useful advice in there for garages who are thinking about maybe reviewing what they're doing. What sort of advice could you give a garage that's maybe listening to this and thinking, oh, we need to do something with our website? Is there a sort of checklist or something you could Give them some
Yeah.
advice to go, where are we on a scale of 1 to 10 with our current setup?
I think you can view a website in two different ways broadly. The conversation is online, the research is online, the comparisons are happening online. So you need to be online. You can quite easily find out if your website's up to anything by you go into incognito mode or private mode, depending on what browser you're using. If you go into incognito mode or private mode, the reason why I would suggest that is because then that takes away the skew of your personal search history. So with mine, you can imagine so many garage websites, I wouldn't get any true results. So I go into incognito, and then you can literally just look at all the key services that you would want to be found, type it into Google, use the words. Now, I wouldn't suggest that you use the words near me if you're doing it in your office or you're doing it in your garage business. Do it at home. But do it with near me or the place where you're located, your location focus, or your customer catchment area, because you can make yourself relevant beyond the actual location of your premises. And see if you're appearing on the first page of Google. And then if you do appear on the first page of Google, follow that customer journey, click on that link. Now, what's on that page to compel you to do the next thing? So you can do that for all your key services. That's a really easy way. The other thing is that if you're dealing with an agency that are looking after your website, ask for metrics. If you don't have any performance metrics, well, how can you assess what ROI you're getting from that website investment? Because an ineffective website is a cost to the business. It's not a cash generator. An effective website is a cash generator. It will always bring in a positive ROI. But one thing also, we were talking about garages taking responsibility or hopefully going on that learning curve where they can hope to identify what is profitable, what's not profitable within the business. It's a strange thing with our customers. So we have just over 450 odd customers now. But I would say less than 10% have if their garage management software system has a booking facility that can be enabled onto the website, and all of the major ones do, we've only got 10% of our customers with that on their website. So again, that's a question of what is the culture within the garage business? Because if you're using your GMS's booking facility, then you're not having to do double bubble by using a third party and then transposing the taken slots because you just had a phone call coming in or whatever else like that. So I don't quite understand why we have so few enabled booking calendars on our websites. And I think, that is a direct alignment of what you want to be happening within the business to how you can be. There's a new term called frictionless. So you're making it super easy, particularly for the young, to be able to get their cars in. And you've already, you've determined the slots that are available anyway. And then, so I think performance metrics, you should be expecting that. You should be expecting, you can figure out whether you're being found for your key services yourself. Definitely look at your Google business profile. It's a real secret weapon. And I want to make it as public as possible for the garage trade because, I want them all to prosper. And if they prosper, and then there's more money coming in, and then they can invest in things, and they can invest in training like yours, James, or websites like mine, And then with social media, make certain that your audience are lay people like me, not sneering fellow mechanics down the road who are saying, why is he putting that up online? We just like to be, if we don't know something, it's all predicated on trust, your hope for honesty, your hope for integrity. And if you can see your car on a website feed, well, you go, oh, I got a car like that. I'll take it there next time. It's just it's a conversation. To be social media to work, you have to be sociable, and I don't think you have to overthink it, but you have to know who your audience is to keep it relevant. And it's not your peers; it is definitely your customers.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's some really sage advice. Yeah, really sage advice. I often think of the social media as people like me, and the me is your ideal customer. So really the people like me that should be attracted to your posts are people that you've got in your customer base that you want more of. And we talk a little bit about customer classification, that you're a customer, the one that your heart skips for joy when they phone, that you like to engage with, that's the frictionless transaction when they come to the garage, that they probably drop box of chocolate in at Christmas. Really your mission as a business owner is to attract more of your A customers. And if we think about down the scale, we classify the worst customers as a D customer. So the D customers we would classify as a drain, where they suck the life out of you, they suck the life out of your staff, they suck the life out of your business, they make you wonder why you came to work, or they question your vocation in the trade. And actually along there, you've got B and C, which fit into subcategories. But really, birds of a feather flock together. If you attract D customers, and the way you can do that is obviously by special offers and driving the price down and not mentioning value, you tend to get those people, and they recommend people like them. And really, your A customer is what you're thinking. People like me is trying to drive that A customer through your communications, especially on socials, to make more of those customers come together. And it's a bit like that narrowing or funneling of your service, not just the service you offer, but the type of customers that you want to engage with.
There's an old adage where they say, in the garage thing, go after the customer and you'll get the cars in that you want. Well, we flip that on our heads, actually, because one of the things, and again, it's just, we probably have to do a better job in kind of getting this knowledge out there. But in fact, with our websites, one of the questions I ask when it comes to the servicing proposition is it more profitable? Are you set up to deal with cars that are 2, 3, 4 years of age? Or would it be more profitable for you to deal with cars that are 4, 5, 6 years of age? And because in fact, what you can do with content, you can actually even determine the age, not only the manufacturer of the vehicle, the model of the vehicle, even the age of the vehicle. And that's another thing that you can do. So I would just say to garage owners, this is a specialist area, just as their huge knowledge is a specialist area as well. Don't confuse a solution with a requirement. Go to your web agency and say, look, I want cars of this age coming in, and I want this type of work coming in, and I want give them your objectives, give them your requirements, and see if your agency can come up with the goods. And I think there has to be this kind of realization that within a garage business, you have to set aside a percentage of your revenue to invest in getting new customers coming in that fit the profile, that helps your business, that increases your return, that increases your billable hours, and increase your expectations. Ask questions. You don't have to know the answers. You just have to give your requirements. Yeah. And that's a really important thing.
Really, really important thing. Yeah. One of the other things that sprung to mind, Jim, when you were mentioning that is the way we visualize our own website here, that it is, I'm not going to say the most valuable employee, but it works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, driving the right customer with a great interaction that takes them from an inquiry through to looking at the requirements, that we meet them, that gives them the option to complete the purchase, that drops them into our customer list, that sends them an invitation to training, that sends them the information of how to get here, and they turn up in essentially 3 weeks, 4 weeks time to a training course. And our employee robot website that we invest money in is we couldn't do without it. We've geared that way because it works so powerfully. If we look at the way we used to do it, and it was very, very different, taking phone inquiries in and trying to match requirements to the offer. I think what I'm getting from the conversation we've had here is that same visualizing the benefit an employee would bring to the business if they could sit on the phone channeling customers and channeling requirements.
Completely. Yeah. I can't say who, but I know there's somebody who analyzes all inquiries coming through various different booking widgets, and the vast majority are after 5 o'clock. It just makes sense, and I think with a website as well, garage owners can just demand more from their website. You can put tire widgets on there. You can put third-party booking widgets on there, aggregator widgets on there. You can put your own GMS booking widget on there. You can embed your social media feeds in there. And if they're set up the right way, all that's going to do is bring more attention to your social media feeds. You can put your Google reviews on there. You can put a whole array of different things on there. And that website can be an absolute kind of, it's a fulcrum, it's a pivot point to the business. None of this is kind of groundbreaking stuff, but you also want to be in an environment where you're not going to be penalized every single time you want to change something, and it's going to give you a nosebleed.
Yes, yeah.
You don't want that either.
No, and that's the I think that's when we were talking earlier on about the benefits of working with a partner in developing those services, and some of the experience I've got of other business owners were coming to a course to work out the communication with their agency was terrible, and they weren't really seeing the value, and they felt they had to come on a training course to ask the question of the agency about where is all this money going, and it seemed bonkers. But the more I probed into other small business owners, it's not unusual, and I would probably recommend our listener to think about that from the relationship perspective of the consultation and the collaboration about building whatever their presence looks like, and engaging with a company, with the ethics and morals that you've got and that vision about what they should be building. I think that would, for me, is way above what it costs. And if we look at that in terms of you're buying a robot employee with all this extra huge amount of benefit, the return on investment is important, but I think it's a mechanism facilitating for, how you facilitate that, the execution of that. It seems to be very fair, and that you're tied intrinsically to the success of the garage, and that you're doing those reviews and looking proactively is, for me, if I was shopping for a garage website, is definitely music to my ears.
We had a sales guy 2 years ago who's now gone off to a tire specialist, and he told me a way that how he framed the potential ROI of a website, and I thought it was quite clever, actually. And he said that he would ask a customer or a prospective garage owner, if you had 10 phone calls, how many of those would you convert to being customers? And normally it's 7, 8, 9, 10. And then he would ask them, what would be your average profit you would make from the job last month or last year? And then £200, whatever it might be. And then he would say, and how long would you have this customer for? And they would say for life, and then, the children and all the neighbors and whatever. And you go, okay, well, let's go ultra cautious on this. Let's say you convert 4 out of 10. Let's say the profit you made is £80 net profit. And let's say you hold on to that customer for 3 years. So 4 times 80 is 320. For 3 years, that's 960. So that's the way to kind of think about it. If you go ultra cautious and you think, well, I've now got something in place within my business, this robot that is processing everything, that's setting out my stall, that's expounding our values, our provenance as a company, all of that. But that monthly investment is bringing that in, because if they start viewing the lifetime value of customers and be cautious about it, then that gives them the ability to be bold and start potentially investing in areas that at the moment their customer does it or their nephew does it. And you kind of think, that's kind of crackers, because one of the arguments that you're making as an independent that's invested in your business is we're the experts at what we do. We're accountable. We're independent. We've got all those amazing attributes that an independent garage can bring to the customer experience. Instead of going to Quick Fit or these other kind of nameless chains and whatever. But at the same time, they're not applying that thinking when it comes to something which is so instrumental and potentially transformative to their business. And you do sometimes pause and wonder and think, just take a break, just think, ponder it, ask the questions, and
Yes, apply the same rules to the services that you purchase as the ones that you're selling. Yeah, but it's very, very, very wise words there, Jim, and hopefully we'll inspire our listener to take a look at their web offering and consider, ponder, is it the best use of their resources, and the difference a great website makes, which I'm a strong believer, having witnessed that myself. It's an amazing how you don't do that. It's crazy, but yeah. No, superb, Jim. We're getting to the point where we've used up many minutes and we've covered some significant ground. So I'd like to thank you for your immense wisdom there and perspective on the world of marketing and digital marketing and websites and presence. You've offered some immense and very useful advice, and I'm hoping our listener will go away and use some of that and apply it to their business. And I really, really hope that if they're in that market, they communicate with you and get your sage advice about the best way for them going forward. We have a tradition on the podcast of offering you the chance to wave your magic wand as a final thought. So you get 2 wishes about changing things that affect either you or this industry. And you get 1 wish on the up swoop and 1 wish on the down swoop of changing whatever it might be that you think could make a difference. And this could be, making Google open source and belonging to the public, or whatever it could be. It could be anything at all. So if I was to give you these 2 this magic wand, swoosh it and tell me what your wishes for a brighter future would look like.
As you mentioned earlier in James, we're all interconnected. So my business can only thrive if the garages thrive. So my first wish would be that there was far more education in the sector for running businesses. I mean, for me, having met Eddie and George, it transformative for me. I think if we could educate the garage owners on how to run a business, get on top of their KPIs, understand, have a plan. If there's something tangible by which you're actually running your business by, then it's just transformative. It really is transformative. So I wish that there was far more educational access to garages. But I think there is with garage management software systems and people like yourself within your field, and I'd hesitate to say people in our field. There are good guys out there, and there's some incredibly effective things. And I think I have a feeling that a lot of the garage trade have been stung by lots of external suppliers. And but I'd ask them to be bold, ask the questions. There's nothing wrong in asking a question. State your requirements. Don't wrap it up in what you think is the best solution. Find your path that way. And the other thing I would like to change within the industry, and again, it's to do with the garages, but probably more I can play a role in, and people in my position, is the perception. I find it extraordinary. I went up to an event up in Falkirk a few weeks ago, and there were a number of speakers. And then they were looking at a wiring loom diagram, and my heart just sank. I thought I was back in physics class or something, and all these fellas, having had a few beers the night before, they all understood it. They were asking questions about it, and I just thought, bloody hell, when you think about the range of knowledge that these guys have to know about, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, fluid dynamic, whatever it might be. I wouldn't even know the terminology. I just think, the sector as a whole is just not representing itself in the way that it ought to be. And I think if we can bring more professionalism, we can change the public's perception of them. They shouldn't be having to discount this amazing and massive skills and knowledge that they have. So I think education, business education, and perception. If we could change that, then all of us would benefit.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, awesome wishes. Yeah, very, very, really, really well said. And I think that would change things for the better. So, Jim, I'd just like to thank you very much for giving up your time and sharing your benefit and wisdom with our listener. And thanks a million. It's been a really good
thank
chat.
you. It was lovely, and no, thank you very much, James. Yeah, much appreciated.